Varoufakis was the Greek finance minister who dominated headlines in early 2015. He led the struggle against the austerity placed on his country, which was a condition of its debt bailout. His book, Adults in the Room, is his personal account of how this effort failed. Mr. Varoufakis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Is the crisis in the rearview mirror, or what is your sense of the Greek economy today?
Well, it's very simple. The crisis is getting deeper and deeper. Every day is worse than the previous day. And it could not be otherwise, because you have a quadruple bankruptcy. You have the state as bankrupt as it was in 2010. You have banks that are insolvent, and they therefore do not even give credit to profitable business. You have bankrupt companies, and you have bankrupt families. So everybody owes to everybody. No one can pay, and the powers that be in Europe pretend that the whole thing is over, because they're lending more money.
You say years before the arrival of Trump, Brexit, other populist disruptions, the West, and to use your words, practiced character assassination played out in the Greek crisis. What do you mean by that? What is how did the Greek crisis predict or reflect some movements that were already underway?
Well, to put it bluntly, the liberal establishment is complaining about fake news coming from the alt-right. And I think this is correct. They have a reason, good cause to complain about that. But it was the very same liberal establishment that only 2 years ago were practicing the same fake news strategy against people like myself. I would go into meetings with the great and the good, people like Mario Draghi of the European Central Bank, Jack Lew in Washington, D.C., Christine Lagarde at the IMF. And the systemic liberal press would misreport and distort utterly and completely what I was saying in those meetings. They would rule through innuendo and leaks and tweets and completely usurp the quality of the dialogue. So it's a bit rich coming from them when they are now complaining for the fact that Donald Trump has actually upended them, using their own techniques against them.
You describe in your book really a memoir of your dealings with Barack Obama, Jack Lew, Larry Summers, Bernie Sanders, Angela Merkel, Macron, Draghi. The list goes on. What interaction was most significant for you?
I had a conversation with a secret policeman in Frankfurt Airport, part of the Secret Service that was there to provide me with security, a German secret agent who had a conversation with me outside the toilet, saying to me, Minister, before you go, I would like to say to you that what you're doing is very important, not just for your people, but also for us here in Germany. For me, that was the greatest reward I could get. If you want me to talk to you about politicians, I would say that the most significant conversations were with Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister, because there I saw the powerlessness of power. He's the most powerful finance minister in Europe, maybe the world at the time, far more so than Jack Lew was at the time, in terms of the impact that he had on policy. And agreeing with me that what was being done to my country was detrimental to the interests of my country, but also to Europe, and declaring, or actually the two of us finding ourselves in a situation where we realized that both of us were powerless. And it's okay for me to be powerless because I was the finance minister of a failed country, of a bankrupt country. But for him to feel equally powerless, given the way that the architecture of politics and finance has made it almost impossible in Europe to do the right thing by Europeans. That was a lesson in how power is propagated without the powerful having it.
Your advice, given your experience, to a couple of people. First, what would your advice be to President Donald Trump?
To not antagonize China because you're playing with fire. As you're boosting the federal budget deficit, playing with fire on the other side of the Pacific with your major creditors, at the time when they are keeping the global economy going through their own management of aggregate demand by means of credit boosting, is a very silly policy.
And you mentioned the deficit. I have to bring up U.S. deficit to GDP, debt to GDP rather. If you look at all the debt is over 100%. Given your history, what would you say to politicians about that level here?
don't worry about the debt to GDP ratio in America. America does not have a debt problem. What you have a problem with is investment. Investment in fixed capital, in productive capacities, is very low compared to your savings and compared to the mountain of liquidity slashing around the financial sector. You need to boost investment in things humanity needs, and you need to help Europe do the same, and to help China at the very same time reduce its investment rate because it's unsustainably high.
Last piece of advice for Theresa May as she negotiates Brexit.
End these phony negotiations and apply for a Norway-style solution for at least 5 years or 7 years to give certainty to business and citizens, allow Angela Merkel to breathe a sigh of relief that the problem will be pushed on to the next chancellor in Germany, and finally give the House of Commons, your parliament, an opportunity to discuss in peace and quiet, without a gun on its head, what kind of arrangements it wants the United Kingdom to have with the European Union in the future.
Last question for you. What, in your view, is the biggest threat to capitalism right now?
Capitalism.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Capitalism creates all the technologies
Yeah.
that undermine the capitalist relations of production, as we leftists used to say.